Hello and welcome to the report on my game Animals Await Home. And first we're going to start off with the research side and everything which I did prior to beginning to make the game. So
I decided to research what it takes to be a level designer, and to do this I searched someone's portfolio named Sean Gorman. He's designed levels for Suicide Squad, and as you can see by the image I've placed, a little bit of information about what his portfolio is and what is in it. So, whilst doing the research, I found out a lot about how level designers have their job overall. So, for instance, it's not just designing levels and drawing them out, you've got to research into the type of game you're doing first. So, for mine, obviously, I had to research games for children. I then had to draw out a simple plan. As you can see, you'll see the drawings soon. And then after that, I then had to block out the levels and do a basic playthrough of it just to make sure they are working. The thing is with level design is a lot of people think it's just designing the levels and just drawing them down, but it's not. For instance, for this, I had to research the animal habitats as my game has animals in and where they're from. So it's not just about doing the levels as a whole, it's also about linking the levels to back research that you've done. So if your game is based on a time period, you'll have to research the time period. But for mine, I obviously had to research the habitats and about the animals, as the animals are the main part of my game.
I believe that my research was really successful, as I started off by doing simple level ideas. As you can see, I did paper ideas, and I also went into Unreal and did a very small block out. As it is only a demo, I didn't want it to be too overcomplicated for the main game. Also, because the game is for children, I wanted to make it simple, but also enough difficulty to make them enjoy the game as well. Now, I researched things along the lines of the animals. So, for instance, the squirrels live in trees, so I had to research about that, and I had to research where the different animals are from just to get the right design idea. The only thing that I wish I did do is research a little more on the environments of it. So also you can see I've done a bit of a linear map just showing what's important and what's not important, and you can see I've colour coded to what needs to be done by each milestone, which is around every 4 weeks. I also created a Trello board, as you can see. Now the Trello board has red, orange and green. So red is the most important things to do, and then you have orange, which are also important but get onto them after, and green are things which I either didn't add or didn't need in the end, so took them out of the game. Some of the other things which I wish could have gone better, especially with the research side, was I wish I left enough time at the end to solve any major problems, and you'll see later on when I talk about some of the blueprints, I had a few problems, and it took quite a while to find out, so I had to take out certain aspects of the game which I wanted to keep in. Now, we're going to start by going on to showing my blueprint. So, to start off with, I'm going to show probably the most important blueprint which I actually had in the game. So, this starts off with the timer blueprint. So, at the top of the screen, there's a timer, and it counts down from 3 minutes all the way down to 0, and when you hit 0, the level needs to restart. So as you can see that I'm just showing how I made the blueprint is pretty simple. You do the time span, you add a second each time, and you basically have to type in how many minutes and seconds that you're wanting. So with this, I could literally set each level to any amount of time, but I thought 3 minutes would be good, one, because it's for children, so it gives them enough time, and obviously, when I play tested it, I could do it quicker, but you need to imagine it being a child playing it. So I thought 3 minutes would be a good amount of time for each level, and it keeps it consistent, having 3 minutes for each one. Now, as you can see, it's now working. At the top corner, you can see it counting down a little bit. One of the other main things which I added was the pick up items in the final level. So this was when you pick up 10 of the logs, you build the bridge and the bridge spawns in. So what I had to do for this, for the blueprint, as you can see, is I first had to set it, so I had to cast it to the first person character, which is your character blueprint. Obviously mine's in first person, so it's always going to be the first person one. And I made some integers with pickups on there, so I could type in the max number of items you can collect and how many you start with. So I started off with 0 and I had a max of 10, but you could obviously set this to whatever I wanted to. And it basically states that when I go over it, it destroys it, so you can't keep picking up the exact same one, and it will basically then add a number 1 and then 2 and so on and so on. And as you can see on the HUD, I also did it. I casted it to there as well, so you can actually see the number as you're collecting them, just so you don't get too overcomplicated, so people can see how many they've got instead of counting in their heads, especially because there's 10. It makes it a lot easier to have that. Now, onto just one of the smaller blueprints is the typical pause menu for the game, just in case people need a break. It's basically very simple. When you press the escape key, it casts to a screen which I created, which has quit and resume. Now the quit button obviously takes you out of the game onto your home screen, and resume, it will carry on playing. Now a good thing about this is linking to the timer blueprint is the timer will stop when you click pause. You don't need to spend all of the time to be wasted, so if you get down to a few seconds and you have to pause it, it won't waste your time, so everything's good there. Now it's very simple. You just cast it over, create the widget, and put it all in. And you've got to show your mouse cursor on it as well, which was the one problem which I kept forgetting, was to show the mouse cursor. Now we're going to move on to one of the more complicated blueprints, which probably took one of the longest times, and this is the animal attack. So for this, I'm going to show you the normal blueprints and the animal blueprint which I made, which are the foxes, which attack and hurt the player by 10 damage each time, but you can obviously set it to anything. So you basically have to get the location of the actor, and it walks around on the map using the nav mesh. And when it casts to the first person character, once it sees the character, what will happen is it will create a montage. This is the animation which I made of the fox running. So during it, you'll see that I had to add the running animation and I had to add the attack animation. So you'll see it will play the attack one when it's near the character to hit, and it will do the normal walking one when it's around. And when it does this, it will apply 10 damage to the character, which is in my character blueprint. And I've also done it where it does the biting motion as well. So just a little tiny thing of it showing that that's the motion when it attacks the players, just so you can see. Now I'm also going to show just one more blueprint which was a bit more difficult to make, which was the talk into animals. Now this is when you hit the E button, you talk to the squirrel at the beginning, and you will see the writing comes up on the bottom. So for this, as you can see, that when you press the button, it will automatically cast to the speech, and I had to make the separate widget of the where it shows onto the UI, and then I also had to do a talk index and a dialogue setting. So as you can see in the bottom right corner, I added enough erase to fit it, and this is so each time you click E, it starts on number 1, then goes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So as you can see by the video, you can see that I am clicking in between them, and you can see that I'm now interacting with the squirrel for it. So overall with the game, I believe it worked very well. I managed to create the 3 levels which I wanted to, plus a tutorial, which I originally wasn't going to add, but I thought it would create a better understanding of the game if I had a tutorial with it. The only thing which I would like to make it better is I'd like to add more levels for children who are a bit older. Obviously, my game is for more younger children, around 7 plus, but I want to make some levels which are for older children with more difficult puzzles, like key puzzles, which also link to animals, but different puzzles where you might have to collect things to open certain areas. That would be good. The only problem I had really whilst making the game, the timer blueprint, I had a lot of problems with, and time-wise I didn't have a lot of time to do it in. So that was the biggest problem. However, altogether I stuck to my Trello board. I had to take a few things out, like I wanted to add another animal to attack on level 2, but I decided just to stick with the foxes just to make it a bit more simple, as it is quite difficult to do the animation blueprints. Altogether, the game that I made was to show my level design skills. I wanted to make a prototype and a demo game based on my level design. Now, it has changed my perception a lot on level development. There is a lot more to it than what I originally expected. To start with, you've got to draw everything out, or do like an ideas generator just to think of what to do, and then planning it, and then making sure you have enough time to finish building the demo. See, for this, even though I had a Trello board, I didn't think some things would take as long as I expected to, so that was a fallback. So I definitely have learned from this that with level design specifically, that it's a lot more than what I thought it was originally. I thought it'd be a lot easier to design levels, but I found out I kept wanting to add loads of different things. I just had to stick to a nice, simple game, because obviously it is for children. Now, because of this project, I will say I am a lot better prepared for the level design industry. I now know what it takes to do a block out. I know what it takes even to do simple blueprints, because the simple blueprints are actually quite difficult. I also found out timekeeping and planning is probably the best thing for a level designer, just to make sure you do everything on time. Now, this is going to be my overall evaluation on what I believe about my full game in total and my demo. So, comparing to the professional work that is out there, because mine is a demo, obviously the looks to it are obviously not as professional as what you see out there, but for a demo game, I believe it is very professional. All the blueprints are working, the game has a nice flow to it, and I feel like when playing it, it's exciting, it's got the background music, and it's all put together to make a full game. I do believe that to make it a little bit better, I could have maybe added some more animation and add some more voice actors for it, just to make it a bit more exciting. But overall, I do believe that the game is to professional standard. The only other difference is I think I could have polished a few bits a bit better. So maybe at the end have like a end screen instead of going straight back to the title, in my opinion. But because it's only a demo, obviously I didn't need it.
Now, one of the other problems I did have whilst making this game was Unreal Engine as a whole. So, this was the first time I ever used Unreal Engine 5, and even though I have a high powered computer, it appeared that I would need a more high powered one to run the game without any lag. So, for instance, when I was testing my game, a lot of the time I struggled testing due to my computer wasn't as powerful, so it lagged quite a bit throughout playing. Another thing about Unreal Engine 5 is a lot of the blueprints were a lot different to how I did them in Unreal 4, so I had to do a lot of research on how to actually do the Unreal Engine 5 ones, as Unreal Engine 4 had completely different blueprints for certain things. Another thing with it is a lot of the time my computer seemed to overheat, which meant I had to take a lot of breaks in between doing work, which I found quite difficult, but managed to find a scheduled way around it. Now, the only other thing which I would like to say, which I wish I did better, is I wish that I had a bit more access to testing the game. So obviously I tested out the game and people my age and adults tested, but because my game is for children, I would have hoped to get actual children testing with the age range which my game is, but I didn't have access to that. So in the future, I would like to set up just for some children to test the game, just to make sure it is definitely able to play for them, just to make sure it's easy enough for them to play.
Finally, I would like to say that this project has definitely shown me a lot about being a game designer and especially a level designer, but it has taught me a lot about what goes into actually making a game, and I have enjoyed it thoroughly. And thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the game and playing it.